Hi, I'm Paul from Production Expert. This is the 5th video in the series of tracking and mixing using a UAD Apollo interface. In the first videos we concentrated on tracking, and the last video we mixed the drums. Now we're going to move on to the other instruments. So let's start with the bass. As you remember, when we recorded the bass, we were monitoring through a Fairchild 660. And what I've done there is to copy the exact settings that we used when we were tracking and used them in the insert inside of Pro Tools. But I'm still not happy with the sound of the bass. I want to give it a bit more bottom end. But let's have a quick listen to the track.
Trying to pretend we're okay, we can be
Let me solo the bass. And let's hear it in the track again.
But we're only getting older, you say. It's okay, we got a lot in common.
So the bass actually sounds quite well rounded, but let's add a bit more bottom end in. And for this, I'm going to use the Harrison 32C. So let's wind the low frequency knob all the way down. And let's give it a little boost.
We're okay, we can be friends, but it's not that simple, dear. We got so much history.
Let's solo the bass. So if I take it back to 0. And as you can hear, that's just rounding off the bottom a bit. Okay, let's go up to 2.8 kilohertz here, because I just want to get the pluck out as well. Let's give that a boost. And let's hear the before and after. Here's it in bypass. And let's bring it in.
So much history, and I don't believe that we are meant to be. This beauty in the moment, but we're only getting older, you say.
So that's really starting to work for me. So let's move on to the piano. Now, I've said this before in my other videos, but piano for me is one of the hardest instruments to mix in a track because it's got such a wide frequency range. As we've increased the bottom end of the bass, and in the last video we increased the bottom end of the kick drum. So to clean up the bottom end on the piano, I'm going to use the Tone Lux tilt. And all I'm going to do is just to tilt the EQ just this way by about 3. Let's bypass it. And let's take it out of bypass. Even though we haven't done a lot, that's really cleaned up the bottom end. One of my favourite plugins for making a piano sit in a mix is the Spl Vitalizer because of the stereo expander. Let me show you how to use that. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to drive it a bit harder. I'm going to tighten the bass up. And this compressor here only works on the bottom end. And now we can use the magic, which is a stereo expander. Listen to what happens. And let's hear that in the track.
We got a lot in common, I cry. It's not you, it's my heart that is a problem. Why? How did we let this time slip by?
So what that's done is to really push the piano out of the middle and into the stereo field, which sounds absolutely great to me. Okay, so now we've got the piano sitting really nicely in the mix. Let's move on to the other 3 parts, which is the pad, guitar 1 and guitar 2. So let's have a listen to the pad first. What I want to do is to clean up the bottom end of that pad. So what I'm going to use on that is a Neve 31102. Now this is a really great sounding EQ where you can really clean up the bottom end but also add some sparkle on the top as well. So let's clean up the bottom first of all. And let's filter off about 70 Hertz. And I'm also going to filter off the top as well, about 18. Now I'm going to bring the shelf in here. And let's boost 16 kilohertz. And that's added that lovely top end sizzle to it. And let's hear that in the track. going to drop the volume back a bit as well.
And now I'm all alone, surrounded by 1,000 people's souls.
Let's move on to the guitars. Let's have a listen to guitar 1. Now this sounds fine, but I just want to add a bit of reverb to it. And if you remember, the reverb that we used for our vocals was the EMT 140 plate. So let's add a bit of that to the guitar. So go to reverb 1. Let's turn the send up to taste. And let's hear that in the mix. So that's starting to sound good. So let's add some compression to this guitar just to tame the peaks. And for this, I'm going to use the UAD LA2A, the grey edition. I really like the grey edition. It's got a lot of character and it really adds to guitars. So let's have a listen. And let's bring up the peak reduction. Put in bypass. Bring it in. And let's hear that in the track. So that's sounding good. Now let's bring in guitar 2. What I want to do with this guitar is to compress it a bit and also control some of those low muddy frequencies. So what I'm going to do first of all is to use the same LA2A as I used for the last guitar. And let's adjust that to taste. Right, I'm not going to compress this as much. Let's bring it back a bit. And that's sounding good. Now, as you'll notice, I copied it into slot number 2 because I want to put an EQ into slot number 1. And for this, I'm going to use the Chandler Curve Bender. The first thing that I want to do with the Curve Bender is to control those muddy frequencies. So let's bring the low up to 300 Hertz, and I'm just going to cut those frequencies by about 2 dB. Now let's go up to 4.2 kilohertz, and let's give that a bit of a boost. And let's use 10K and give that a boost as well. Let's bypass it. And bring it in. I'm going to add a bit more top on there. Let's hear that in the track.